Yesterday, as we were going over some news in the Lynette Hooker case, I think it was in headlines yesterday, I said, you know what? I need to talk to my pal Brian Bennett about this whole strangulation aspect of the case. And I reached out to him, and he's like, yeah, man, I'm on. So today is going to be, with Brian's schedule, with my schedule, we needed to pre-record it. So I recorded about a 35, 40-minute conversation with Brian Bennett on strangulation. Now, the cases that we're talking about today are both Lynette Hooker and Anna Kepner. And you'd think that maybe there's nothing related between these cases. One's a 50-plus-year-old retiree sailing around the Caribbean, or not even the Caribbean, but just sailing around in retirement. And the other is an 18-year-old high school senior cheerleader. Both died on the ocean, though, and both, I think, well, there's a strangulation connection. So we're going to play the conversation that I had with Brian. But we're going to do a couple other things too, guys. We got a busy, busy day here. Let me bring up my thing. We're going to start with the question of the day, okay? Question of the day to get you guys going, get you guys chatting is... what's a lesson you learned later in life that you wish you could teach your younger self? As I was talking with Brian today, I was thinking about all the things that we were talking about related to DV, related to SA. And obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but those have never touched me in my life, right? But you'll see in our conversation, we talked a lot about what can we learn and what can we do to avoid situations, not to blame Anna or to blame Lynette, but to avoid situations like this. Sometimes they're unavoidable. But then it got me to thinking, man, there are lessons that I have learned in my old age that I wish, my old age, I'm 50, in my upper middle life age. I hope it's upper middle life, that I wish I could teach to my younger self, and I wish my younger self would accept my advice, would accept that lesson. So tell me the answer to that question while you're there. Also tell me where you're tuning in from. I love to know where you're tuning in from. So today we're going to get into the Lynette Hooker case, the Anna Kepner case. We are going to play the Brian Bennett interview. We've got 3 questions, and then we've got some headlines in the Nancy Guthrie case, in the Charlie Kirk assassination case, in the Karen Reed civil case, the Spencer and Monique Tepe case. We've got some good news as well. We like to leave a good taste in our mouth at the end there. So what do we got? We got 10 gallons of content that we need to fit into a 5-gallon show, and we're going to do it. Stick with me. This video contains mature themes and discussions intended only for adult audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello there, my friend. Welcome back to another True Crime Conversation with me, Gavin Fish. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm glad you do, from wherever you tune in. Thanks for doing it. I am in Western Pennsylvania in the Northeast of the United States. Where are you from? Tell me in the comment section, and also tell me what is a lesson you learned later in life that you wish you could teach your younger self. And in my case, see, I have to learn the hard way on everything. I just do. It's just the way I learn. But if I could teach my younger self something, I wish my younger self would also listen. He wouldn't. He wouldn't, guys. He wouldn't. My younger self is a stubborn guy. Angela checking in from Kokomo, Indiana. Thank you very much for being here, Angela. Let's see if I can get that to show up here. There it is. Nice. Jenny is a member for 6 months. I'm a whole half year old here. Woohoo! Thanks for all the great content, Gavin. Thanks for being awesome. Hi to all my chat friends. Thank you, Jenny, for being awesome. By the way, Speaking of membership, tomorrow we're going to be doing, I'm going to schedule, it'll be my first one. Tomorrow we're going to do an after show. We're going to do it for YouTube members and for patrons. We're going to do it simultaneously. And I'm excited to do it too, by the way. It's going to be great. So, yeah, if you are a member like Jenny is, or if you are a patron of mine over on Patreon, there's always a link down in the description to Patreon. We'll be doing an after show. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Nancy Guthrie case, and we're going to be talking about whatever y'all want to talk about. Magical Mary says, Brian Enton posted that the second wife of Brian had a protection order against him as he stated there might be an accident. Apparently, he was abusive to her. And that is what we were talking about yesterday, Magical Mary. Not just any ordinary Mary, Magical Mary. That's what we were talking about yesterday that made me go, I should call Brian. So we are in sync, Mary. You and me, we're in sync. Michelle is checking in from Salisbury, Tennessee. Julie says, when it comes to mean bullying behavior, 3 strikes and you're out of my life. That's a lesson that you would, I honestly think Julie, it could be 1. It could be 1. I think so. Bully. Actually, I've got a pretty good friend that when we were younger was kind of mean. But so maybe you're right. Maybe 3 strikes is better. Abuse is a different thing, right? Abuse, 1 strike for me. Terrific Tui says, hi from Vancouver, Canada. I would teach my younger self that people's opinions do not matter. I love it. I love it. Oftentimes you can just ignore people, right? Hot Marietta, Georgia is in the house. Dallas, Texas is here. Boston is here. Melbourne is here. So glad you are here. England is in the house. Gluten-free 86. Good to see you. Houston, Texas. Houston is the home. What game did I just see? Was that the Ivory Coast and the Netherlands? Was that in Houston? Have you guys been watching the World Cup? Ever since I lived in Argentina, I became a real aficionado of the old associated football, as they used to call it. Newton, West Virginia is in the house. Great Salt Lake is in the house. Glad you're here. And MSB says 1 strike and you're out of my life. You're kind of more in sync with me. Guys, let's talk about the cases that we're bringing up today, okay? First, just a quick recap-a-rooney here. This is Anna. Anna was an 18-year-old high school senior. She was on the Carnival cruise ship Horizon. She was with her family, which included her stepbrother, Timothy Hudson, this guy right here, when she just disappeared. Now, it appears that these children kind of had the run of the ship. They couldn't find her, but they eventually did find her stuffed underneath a bed covered in like life preservers and blankets and pillows and such. And of course, her life had been snatched away from her. She had been snuffed out, sadly. And her stepbrother, Timothy Hudson, who appears to have had some sort of fixation on Anna, he has been charged in her murder and her SA. Anna was killed by strangulation, thus Brian Bennett. Now this, guys, this is Lynette Hooker. Lynette Hooker was a 50-plus-year-old living her best life with her husband, Brian, living it on the boat Soulmate. And according to Brian, they were on this little dinghy. She had the kill switch to their little electric engine attached to her when what he said was that in rough seas, she fell off the dinghy, killing the boat, making it so that he had to paddle to shore because he couldn't reach her. She's not been seen or heard from since. Now, there have been allegations. There have been allegations that Mr. Hooker, Mr. Brian Hooker, this guy right here, let's get a close up. There he is. he allegedly was physically and otherwise abusive to Lynette, to his previous ex-wife. Lynette was his third wife, and to and to Lynette's daughter, if I remember correctly. You guys correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think that's the case. And there are some allegations that he did throttle, that he choked slash strangled at least one person. I need to remember. I need a quick reminder, Rooney. Let me come over here real quick. I like to go to crimetimelines.com, and I'm just going to open up a case file here. Lynette Hooker's case file. And I just want to yeah, pinned the let's see, this was 2005. During an incident later investigated by Kentwood police, child witnesses said Brian Hooker became upset during an argument at the home, chased a child upstairs, pinned the child against the door, and placed both hands around the child's neck. One witness said the child was lifted partly off the ground by the neck. So that is the background there, and that is the strangulation side of things. Now, as Brian has taught us multiple times, when a victim survives a strangulation event, they become 800% more likely to be a victim of homicide. 8 times more likely to be a victim of homicide if they are a survivor of strangulation. And that homicide usually is actually done by handgun, so doesn't necessarily have to be done by strangulation. So that is the connection, and that was what I was wondering going into my conversation with Brian. And I'm going to bring this up here so you guys, let's see, can see this, and I'll do it full screen here in just a bit. But my questions are not only my question is, do the odds of somebody else around this person go up? The odds of being a homicide victim, do they go up as well, or is it just the victim survivor? And Brian has something very interesting to say about that. Before we get into it, there are a couple of other comments I just wanted to bring up real quick. The Only Mooney, our intrepid moderator, says, I would tell my younger self to trust my gut. That advice has come in handy, but in my early years, I would do it anyway and put myself in precarious situations. You and me both. First to die, DYE 69 from Michigan. I'm Goddess from northeastern U.S. and northwestern PA, Erie. It's good to have you here. Thank you very much for being here. See if anything. Yeah, Crime Lines is amazing. I love them. See if there's anything else that you guys. Ruby for Justice says, I don't know the hookers too well, but Brian gives me the yick factor. Well, I think that you are not far off on your assessment of Brian Hooker. I don't know the guy, but man, the whole thing seems super fishy. So, without further ado, I shall zoom on up here, and right now it looks like I'm speaking without moving my lips, but this is a recording from earlier today, just a few short hours ago, with Brian Bennett. And I hope you guys enjoy. Let's go ahead and start it. Here we go. Okay. Brian, welcome back.
Well, pleasure to be with you again.
I am glad you're here. And, for, I guess, a little inside baseball for people that are just watching this, Brian is proactive. You are all about your little, I don't want to belittle it, but like your crusade, right? You are a strangulation expert. It's important to you. You're working to make laws get passed in your state, and you're proactive. You reach out to me when you see something in a case that you want to talk about. You reach out to me, and I really appreciate it.
Oh, well, you're quite welcome. Yeah, it's before I knew any better, I didn't realize the prevalence, the frequency of strangulation, and just what type of critical damage it causes for people, not just to their physical body and to their brains, but also to the psychological trauma that they experience. And so, when we talk about issues related to strangulation, it's very holistic in the sense that it really affects a person's entire body, their psyche, their physical well-being. And for those that survive, this is a lifelong issue and lifelong complications that they're going to deal with. And the more that we bring awareness and understanding to this type of issue, it's my cause, if you would call it that, to prevent this in the first place. If we can prevent it and raise the level of awareness, then so be it. But for those that have already suffered some type of non-fatal strangulation incident, it's a matter of triage and taking care of themselves in the short term and long term for their own well-being.
So the two cases that we're talking about today specifically are the murder of Anna Kepner. She was a Titusville, Florida girl, senior in high school, cheerleader, was on a trip with her family, her stepbrothers, and she disappeared, right? And then was found and the medical examiner ruled her cause of death strangulation. There are some indications that maybe there was some stalking involved on this on behalf of her alleged assailant. And then the second one is Lynette Hooker, who we don't know what happened to her. We don't know if she's alive or dead. She is a missing person. I think most of us believe that she is dead, and there are allegations that her husband Brian Hooker had well, I don't know if there were allegations that he had choked her or if he had choked the stepdaughter. But there were choking allegations in that one. And I remember from the times that you and I have talked in the past that strangulation events, non-fatal strangulation events, are a big indicator that there may be a homicide later. Am I saying that right? Tell me what that is.
Yeah, so for those that aren't aware, there's been research that has been done academically in different professions of psychology, law enforcement, human behavior that have indicated very strongly that individuals that use the specific form of assault that we call strangulation have a very clear path towards committing a potential homicide. As it relates to women, specifically in domestic violence, the most recent percentages is that a woman who survives one strangulation event is 800% more likely to be killed later. Now, that's often with a firearm, but the idea being that patterns of strangulation indicate a mindset that someone can rationalize in committing a homicide and actually doing it later. But there's also an increased risk to our law enforcement officers, other crimes or crime or victim typologies beyond domestic violence. You get into children or child abuse, vulnerable adult and elder abuse, human trafficking, SA, kidnappings, and you'll see this common thread of strangulation pop up relatively regularly. So it presents a very dangerous picture that is supported by research
Now,
when strangulation is present.
when you talk about as it's related to women, like you just said, a female strangulation survivor, a victim strangulation survivor, being 8 times more likely to be a victim of homicide later. Is that
Mhm.
typically by the same assailant, or could it also be a different assailant?
It's typically by the same assailant. Yeah, you're right. It's just again, it sets a pattern of conduct and a intellectual or criminal mindset in the offender, and unfortunately, um, and this is somewhat anecdotal, but it's reported by some research as well that uh, patterns of strangulation tend to get worse. So it's not like most people just start off strangling. It's almost like over time they perfect their craft per se. They test the waters. They see how much pressure and violence they can get away with, and when they discover that in a lot of cases, 50% of cases, in fact, that of strangulation where there's no external signs of injury that are left, um, they tend to uh, use it repeatedly because it's a lack of being discovered or
Ah,
lack of disclosure. So, and the thing
yeah.
is, if you know that you're going to get caught at something, you're probably not going to use that type of method over and over again. But when you find that the level of force needed is very low, that the signs and symptoms of injury or evidence that would support there was a some type of criminal assault is often not seen easily, then it makes sense to keep repeating that act until such time as either they're discovered. And unfortunately for us in law enforcement in the criminal justice system, we unfortunately find out about it way too late, oftentimes,
Right.
when someone actually dies, or if they're a survivor, they have such severe injuries at that point, it can't be ignored. But there's a lot of strangulation survivors that suffer in silence because, again, they don't disclose or they can't disclose because their memories uh, deficient because of brain injury, or there's just nothing to be seen by those that are outside observers
Well,
to ask questions.
that kind of reminds me. I mean, this is a theme that we see throughout true crime, right? I covered the Madeline Soto case at length.
Mm-hmm.
I probably did over 100 videos of poor little Maddie's case. And of course, this was like prolonged, repeated SA over the course of a long period of time. But that is a person who honed his craft as a predator to uh, to stay invisible to the whole world during the time that he was doing that. And he was only discovered, like you were just saying, because Maddie died, right? So it does make sense that people that are honing their predacious craft, right, will learn how to get away with those things. And if they can find a way to hurt their victims without anybody else seeing it, and if they're manipulative enough and controlling enough to make it so that their victims don't say anything about it, then they get away with it until the ultimate act happens, right?
Yeah, exactly. And as it relates to SA, think about this for a minute. You sometimes hear common terminology like drug facilitated SA.
Okay.
Well, that indicates or suggests that there's some type of drug involved, whether it's an illicit drug or some over-the-counter overdose to incapacitate that individual. But when it comes to strangulation facilitated SA, that is a tool that the offender carries with them at all times. That's nothing that has to be sought out, purchased, obtained. Those are personal weapons, hands or ligatures that they have with them all the time and don't have to worry about purchasing anything.
Yeah.
So strangulation facilitated SA, I think, is as problematic or more frequent than drug facilitated.
What is it about I what is it about the neck that it's like a magnet for crime, right? It was once described to me that it's just the part of our body that is the most vulnerable, and we instinctually want to protect it. But for those who are predators, I mean that it. I guess they it's instinctual to them that that is the place where their victim is most vulnerable. I guess.
Yeah, when you look at other areas of the body and the way our bone structure is located, just about every part of our body has some type of bone structure that gives it some rigidity, some ability to resist pressure, higher pressures and longer durations. But when you look at our neck, I mean, it's only our spinal cord or our spinal column in the very back. All of the frontal structures of the neck are very pliable, subject to being occluded or blocked off with very little pressure. And when there's very little pressure that's necessary to close off these structures, there you get the lack of demonstrative and observable external injuries because it just doesn't take a lot. And the fact of the matter is that the animal kingdom, which we are animals, we're Homo sapiens, but we're in that category. In the animal kingdom, all predators almost exclusively go for the neck region because of the vulnerability of that area and the lack of protective structure there. It's just the easiest to target and then incapacitate the prey.
Mm. Okay, so in the case of Anna Kepner, let's go to that one real quick. Let me
Mhm.
bring this up. So Anna, again, teenager, who disappeared on the Carnival cruise ship Horizon, and then was found by cleaning staff stuffed under the bed, kind of covered up with life preservers and stuff like that. The medical examiner found that she had been strangled to death, manual strangulation. Or actually, I don't remember specifically if it was manual strangulation or if strangulation with a ligature. Maybe you can remember that. But her stepbrother, Timothy Hudson, has been charged in her murder. Now, what I'm curious about here, Brian, is what is the likelihood that if Mr. Hudson did this, that it was his first time doing it?
It's funny you asked that question because to me, I do not think it was his first time executing. Maybe that's a bad choice of terms, but I don't think it was his first time using that form of assault. Uh, Again, based on what we know from other people, that it's been substantiated that they use patterns of strangulation, um, either with survivors or homicide victims. We generally find something in their history that has led them up to that point. Now, in what shape or form he explored that, whether it was exploration through self asphyxiation, which is another topic in itself, or it was something that was practiced or utilized on animals or friends uh, in some other kind of way. I don't know, but he did not just come up with this randomly. He's had some type of exposure directly or indirectly, or thought about it, or fantasized about it, to the degree that when the time came, that was his choice or method to allegedly end her life. I don't believe at all that this was well, it might have been spontaneous in some way, but I believe, and this is Brian's opinion based on my behavioral science background, that there was already a predatory nature about him in some way
Mm.
that was suppressed. Now, whether that was based on some type of sexual gratification or some type of malicious and benevolent type of core to his being and characteristics, I don't know. Um, but uh, that's just my belief that there was a predatory nature about him as it related to this his stepsister. You had related to some indications of some stalking, which would tend to support that predatory nature.
Yeah, well,
And
one of the things that we learned in the documents that were released in the probable cause documents was that Anna had had um, well, I believe she had had a sexual encounter with another boy on the ship. And the reason that I believe that, I don't think it's a big jump to the conclusion here, but because in those documents they said they found that person, he was also underage. They got a DNA sample, and so why would they get a DNA sample? Well, plus they full on said she that this other juvenile had said that they had had a sexual encounter. So if Mr. Hudson has this fixation on his stepsister, and by the way, like I should point this out too, that um, our kids are growing up in a very prolifically saturated pornographic society right now. And so much of that pornography has to do with this stepbrother stepsister fantasy. And so if he's finding her attractive and he's fantasizing about her and he's being awash with stepsister fantasy pornography, and then he finds out that she has had a sexual rendezvous with another boy on the ship, I would imagine that could lead to some sort of mental break where he'd had enough, and he decided to act out his fantasy on her.
yeah, the a couple things come to mind is lack of impulse control. When I first started looking at this case and he became a subject of the discussion and ultimately charged, uh, the first thing that came to my mind was lack of impulse control. Lack of impulse control. He was impulsive, and acted on it without thinking ahead, and then as a matter of panic, when she died, and then the way he positioned and hit her body as alleged, that was, to me, that was an impulse type of move. He didn't plan anything ahead of time. He just acted when whatever part of his psyche decided to act. As it relates to the pornography issue that you brought up, not only do we have pornography that is normalizing interrelational rendezvous between family members or step family members, but you're also going to find a lot of normalization of strangulation. It used to be that years ago, strangulation or strangulation uh, scenes or whatever were considered like on the fringe, more like a snuff film type of feel, whether it was staged or real. Some of them were actually real. But what you find is you find the strangulation aspect highly normalized now, especially with the ease at which young people can access pornography now. So where people once thought, well, that's very risque behavior, now it's very normalized. It's kind of played off as not a big deal. There's not any complications along with it. We see this also in music. I've got a selection that I do with my training and instruction, where I have music samples of common contemporary music that doesn't hide the fact that strangulation. They speak directly to using strangulation as being some type of fun thing, either in an intimate type setting or just between friends, and causing this silly stupor because of
Hmm.
lack of oxygen to the brain. And it's incredibly dangerous, because it doesn't show the full reality of the potential injuries and harm, both in the immediate and the long term as a result. So yeah, it's culturally, it's bleeding into all areas of our society. And when you talk with young people who don't really know or think about the finality of life, and they don't see too far ahead tomorrow, they don't see 5-10 years down the road, and they act impulsively, it causes a really dangerous mix.
Yeah. The other thing that I was thinking about that I wonder what your thoughts are on this is, and I'm just thinking about boys growing up in the modern world, right? And this is not as an excuse for criminal and horrible behavior, but just trying to understand our culture here. One of the things that I'm concerned about is, and by the way, I'm a fan of this. I'm a fan of these things, but I'm also concerned about it, right? And that is the idea of like mixed martial arts types of violence, where in a very controlled environment with doctors over, highly trained people with doctors, with everybody protecting these fighters. uh, Choking is one of the things that happens. It's one of the ways that you can win fights, and it's a great way to do that. However, then you see videos online of just kids brawling in the backyard, choking each other out, and I wonder if, like, having experiences of that control over another person is something that could develop into some sort of sexual gratification that could later lead to the murder of a beautiful young woman like Anna.
Yeah, I mean, I believe it certainly can. To your comments about mixed martial arts, it's funny that some of my trainings that I do, there are mixed martial arts practitioners in some of my classes where I talk about the danger of strangulation. And I kind of poll the audience, and I ask, people who do mixed martial arts, how many times have you been, quote, choked out? Now, actually, it's strangulation, but that's the term they use: the rear naked choke, the lateral
Right.
vascular neck restraint, that sort of thing. And the highest number that I've gotten is a guy who said that in his 50 years of practicing in martial arts, he's probably been unconscious 70 times.
Whoa.
Yeah. Now others, maybe two or three. Here's the thing: there is no safe way to strangle. So even in the mixed martial arts community, there have been MMA fighters who have died from the complications of a neck hold. Um, Now, to be fair, the reason you don't see charges come out of that is because they're going into a qualified sporting event.
Sanctioned
There
fight. Yeah.
are sanctioned fights. There's doctors and everything there. It's mutual combat by the truest sense of the word. Both people are going in there knowing the risks. But outside of that, like you said, I mean, how many kids grew up on WWE Saturday morning wrestling and then went in the backyard and tussled on the trampoline
Uh,
and were body slamming each other. Yeah.
yep.
So and then now you got kids like you said in the backyard that are choking each other out, and the person revives and everybody's laughing and jovial about it. But for someone who has never thought of it before, but then discovers how easy it is to actually utilize, and then combine that with maybe some part of their upbringing or exposure to other things, or adverse childhood experiences, and developing stalkish predatory behaviors, further down the road, they go, wait a minute, maybe this is something that I can use
This is a tool that
versus.
is in my bag. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I said, it's something that they have available to them all the time versus purchasing a gun, purchasing a knife, purchasing some drugs for a facilitated SA. I mean, yeah, it's theirs, part of who they are.
Yeah. You're talking about Mr. Hudson here, that your opinion, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if I can just repeat what I thought you said, was that it was probably in the moment, right? It was a
Mhm.
decision that happened in the moment. I agree with what you're saying there. I think that the description of what he did with her phone and walking around and and getting rid of evidence and stuff does not ring to me like it was a pre-planned homicide, that he thought that he could get away with murdering his stepsister while they were on vacation in the Caribbean. This seems like some moment of lack of control, of deep anger, and maybe resentment, and then he just used the only tool that was available to him to control her, and it ended her life.
Yeah, and let's be clear about something too. It takes about 2 minutes to kill someone from strangulation. Now, to render someone unconscious, and I have had these discussions before, with the right mechanism and the right pressures applied, it can be as little as 5 pounds of pressure for about 10 seconds to render someone unconscious. But to actually cause brain death, a non recoverable brain death, takes roughly about 2 minutes on average. So, what does that say? That, he is alleged to have used a ligature or manual and held that for 2 minutes.
Right.
That I mean, and then like you said, on the backside of it, the oh no, or she's deceased. What do I do now? Stuff her body under the bed, take things around my environment to cover her up, and then manipulate the phone, and it just yeah, it just a tragedy, to say the least. But I think there are a lot of characteristics that rest in this young man that we'll find uh, came to light probably earlier on in his youth, that
Really,
culminated with this event.
this is kind of one of those. Well, it was brought to the small screen in Showtime's Dexter, right, where he was a little kid
Mhm.
and that had uh, murderous predilections. That's the kind of thing that you're thinking of, that something happened in his life beforehand that led to this.
Yes. Again, and again, that's just speculative on my part, but just
Sure.
25 plus years of behavioral science. And I was actually reviewing another case the other day that related to some strangulation homicides and behaviors in youth. And what that particular case that I looked at indicated or showed is that, yeah, in this gentleman's youth that I was examining, he had done things to other people and to pets back when he was 8, 9, 10 years old. And then it wasn't until he was in his late 30s or early 40s that he became a serial killer.
Wow.
So yeah, it presents a very unique but dangerous and worrisome picture to look at these patterns.
Also interesting that, like, one of the things, the silver lining in this one with Anna Kepner, is that hopefully, anyway, maybe I'm completely wrong, but if young Mr. Hudson did this, I hope it's the first time. I hope that it's not. I hope he's not a serial killer. I hope there's not bodies somewhere around, that he's gotten away with this somehow.
Yeah,
Is there
yeah.
any
Same here.
indication from what you've read that points to maybe this isn't his first time?
Well, I think perhaps, and again, this is just speculative on my point. As far as this being the first homicide, I think it probably is. But I suspect that if people are honest with themselves and honest about the things that they've heard and seen, I'm suspecting that we will discover that there are other people or other events that will come forward. Now, what we would do is we would be relying on other people to step forward and expose either their personal experience with him or someone else's personal experience. So whether that actually happens or not, I don't know. But it's not uncommon for many of the cases that we've seen over the last 4 or 5 years is that once these discussions are had in a courtroom, we find out that other people start talking and coming forward about, oh, well, something happened to me 5 years ago or 3 years ago, where a teacher says, well, we had this interaction at the school and he made this comment about something. I mean, so
Yeah.
um, I suspect something will come out eventually. I just don't know what it is.
Well, and so sometimes that's people finding their courage, right? And there are a lot of reasons for repressing those things or keeping those things to themselves, a lot of valid and strong psychological incentives for people not bringing those forward. But yeah, they could find their courage, or in, framing their interactions with this young man in the past, and now seeing that he is arrested for the murder of someone, that might trigger a memory that they can associate with, hey, this was a little odd, or this seemed a little violent, or seems a little violent in retrospect, right?
Sure, sure,
Yeah.
and they could also feel that there's some level of protection now that if in fact he is found guilty of the charges which have been put on him, and they know that he is going to be limited in his ability to reach out to them or influence them. Some people feel emboldened and go, okay, now I've got a level of protection now that is certain, and I can
Yeah.
feel more free and comfortable to say what I need to say.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, the other case that I wanted to bring up to you, I actually did a live stream last night, and as we were talking about it, I said, "Oh, I got to reach out to Brian on this one." But this is the case of missing boater uh, Lynette Hooker. She was aboard the Soulmate, a sailing boat with her husband Brian Hooker. The story is from Brian that they were sitting on this dinghy, which has a little electric motor. The kill switch was attached to her in rough seas, traveling from land out to Soulmate. She was tossed overboard. It killed the motor, and then for the next 8 hours, he, tried to say, well, he tried to reach her. This is his story, and then eventually paddled back to shore to try to get help. Lynette Hooker has never been heard from since, and there have been allegations by her daughter. There have been court documents that have been reported on recently about his previous ex-wife, but there are allegations that he, quote unquote, choked out a person or people in the past as well. And while we don't know what happened to Lynette Hooker, I suspect that Lynette Hooker is no longer in this mortal coil. I think that she's probably gone. I think that most of law enforcement thinks that she's gone. I think her family thinks that she's gone. But looking back in retrospect, Brian, with the reports of his behavior in the past, what are your thoughts?
Well, uh, uh, as is common with cases like this, and I say this just about every time it happens, when I see a case of a woman who suddenly goes missing and they are currently in a relationship, I immediately start to worry that they are missing and deceased. And I hate to say it, but more oftentimes than not, that ends up being the case. Now, a woman who's single, not in a relationship, and missing doesn't mean that the danger doesn't exist. Doesn't mean that they may not, be found deceased as well. But when it comes to women suddenly missing in a current relationship, we see a fairly common theme of the intimate partner or the spouse being the focus of attention, and unfortunately, sometimes, oftentimes, being the one that is found culpable of causing that death. And so when I saw this case, that's the immediate thought that popped up in my mind, is that this is just too unusual, and there's going to have to be more that comes out. And as we've seen, more has come out, which has alleged a domestic violence history, which has alleged a history of strangulation, which has also documented some issues of her seeking an order of protection, and at least from what I found, the couple like separating and getting back together repeatedly.
Yeah.
So again, when we talk about strangulation or non-fatal strangulation being the number one indicator of a future homicide, it's because of these patterns that we see that we say this. It's not just conjecture. It's not a hypothesis. I mean, this stuff has been researched for 20 years, and there's this consistent theme. So, although I'm not going to sit here and accuse him of something that I can't support, what I will say is that, again, when we see patterns and indications of non-fatal strangulation, it points to a very bad outcome with these sudden missing women cases.
The
And I feel like you that she's probably not with us any longer.
yeah. Um the one of the questions I have, and I don't know if there's data on this, Brian, but for example, in this case, there's allegations of DV against Brian Hooker against multiple people, right? His former wife, he's been married 3 times. Lynette was his third wife. His former wife, who is now deceased, not at the hands of Brian Hooker that we know of, right? I think she just passed away, but um, she had a order of protection against him. They had a tumultuous relationship. There were allegations of DV there. Uh, Lynette's daughter has made allegations of DV. Lynette's parents, in interviews, have talked about a tumultuous relationship. Now, I know beforehand we talked about when a victim survivor of strangulation, well, when a victim of strangulation survives that strangulation event, they're 8 times more likely to be a victim of homicide later. Uh, does that also apply when there appears to be strangulation and DV against other people? Does that mean that I guess the likelihood of others in and around this person, the likelihood of something violent happening to them up to homicide also goes up?
Yes. So what we kind of use as to compare this against is, again, what research and other incidents have shown us. Here recently, I think it was last month, the anniversary of the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando, Florida, with Omar Mateen, and where many people were killed. And people say, well, how is that related to strangulation? Well, uh, uh, he had a history of strangling intimate partners in multiple relationships before that event. And so, even though that wasn't, DV related per se, the mindset of an individual who uses strangulation, we say, is one of potential homicidal. And there's other cases that I could cite where that is the case, where strangulation wasn't just found in one relationship, but preceding relationships. There's a case here in South Carolina um, uh, that is going to get national attention. It did get some national attention. I won't mention it right now, but it's coming up soon. And in that case, there was a young lady who was strangled to death, and her husband has a very clear documented history of using strangulation with other intimate partners before marrying her. So again, we see patterns not just with the individual at the moment, but in relationships preceding the one that ended in death.
I'm curious what that case is. You got to tell me what that case is. Can you? Can't.
Jessica Barnes.
Okay. Wow.
Jessica Barnes. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess I've kept you on here for quite a while, and I really appreciate the time. But on my channel, as you know, we try to learn things, right?
Mm-hmm.
We skate that line where we don't want to blame the victims for,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they are victims, right? And there are a lot of powerful emotional and mental motivators working against all of us, or working with all of us, that make us behave the way humans behave. But I guess in an effort to learn on this kind of stuff, let me put it this way: if your daughter came home with a guy, said, "Daddy, I'm in love with this guy," and you find out later that he has uh, a history of strangulation, what is the advice you give your daughter?
Get out. I mean, seriously. I mean, as a father, I mean, I would be furious for one thing, not at my daughter, but for the individual that they're with to utilize and do something like that. Again, knowing what I know, and this is why I'm so big on advocacy and awareness and training, is to give people the knowledge to know how dangerous it is so that they can be very, very clear in speaking with that individual and say, look, your life is at risk. You may not realize it right now, and you may not have suffered any ill effects at this moment that you know of, but the potential is there for great bodily injury or to end your life. And so we have to be very, very clear to speak truth to these situations. So as a father, that's what I would be saying. I would be begging and pleading to get out for my daughter or my son to get out of a relationship like that, because we actually have some national cases that involve women strangling men to the point of homicide, either by the strangulation or by other means. So women can do it too. Um, but we also know that emotional ties of love and romance and intimacy are very strong. When it comes to domestic violence relationships, even though it's much bigger than what I'm getting ready to say, I point to these two areas. The emotional connections of love and bonding and intimacy are very, very hard to break. They're one of the hardest things to break when ending a relationship. I think everyone who's watching this could probably agree or think of a relationship that they were probably in longer than they should have been. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone watching this has been abused or neglected in some way, but oftentimes many people stay in relationships longer than they should
Mhm.
because of other red flags or whatever, whether it's, finances
Or just
or,
incompatibility,
yeah,
but you kind of love,
exactly.
but I love her, that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I mean, think about it. And I think this is true of most relationships. If the very first date you went on with a significant other, they punched you in the face the moment they opened the door to pick you up on the date, you probably would not go out with them again.
Mm-hmm.
But as relationships develop, it's those first uh, interactions, is that putting on the best appearance, the best face, the best behavior, that gives a lot of domestic violence survivors hope that things will turn around. If I just stick in there long enough and I give them the space that they need and I follow their instructions, they'll get back to the person that I fell in love with. And so this hope and these relationship bonds are some of what keep domestic violence survivors in these relationships. But the other side of that is just the foundational fear, whether it's fear of more abuse, fear of someone harming the kids, fear of the unknown. If I get away and I get out of this relationship, where's my financial support coming from? What type of housing am I going to have? Can I
Right.
keep my job? Am I going to be ostracized? And so
Will I
all
lose
so
my
sometimes.
friends? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So fear of the unknown. So fear, as a counter to the other part, fear is a very big motivator why people don't leave, and they act against their own interest, but it's something that can make sense of, and it's something that they can rationalize. But it's people on the outside that get very judgmental, like, why didn't he or she just leave? Well, it's a lot easier said than done.
Sure.
And again, there's very good reasons why they don't leave, and that's why awareness and patience and understanding and a repetitive encouragement and offering support and resources is really important to anyone in a problematic and relationship with some violence and neglect and exploitation.
Brian, where can people find you online?
So the best way to find me online, there's a few different areas. I have a training and consulting business that is Clearview, one word, Justice Training and Consulting. You can find me on LinkedIn by my name, Brian Bennett. You can find me through Clearview Justice Training and Consulting on my Facebook page. And due to my advocacy work here in South Carolina to pass a felony strangulation law, I have Strangulation Law for SC, that stands for South Carolina, Strangulation Law for SC, which is a private Facebook page for people that want to join. But it's not limited to South Carolina. We have people there from all over the world who have experienced non-fatal strangulation and just want to see information and awareness and training, but also see what we're doing for advocacy and law changes, not just in South Carolina, but anywhere else we can tap into.
Thanks, Brian. Brian Bennett is a former law enforcement officer and trainer and strangulation, domestic violence advocate. Thank you very much for joining me, Brian. I appreciate it.
Pleasure to be with you again.
Guys, Brian is the best. I love having conversations with him. I've been watching the live chat as we've been going along. You guys are one, you're taking care of each other, which is awesome. And also bringing up just how amazing Brian is with his knowledge and his advocacy. After talking to him, I feel like Brian Hooker is a guy who is used to having his abusive way with the people in his life. And I feel like Timothy Hudson is probably, this wasn't the first time that somebody bore the brunt of his temper or his whatever, his sexual fantasies. Though it probably was the first time that somebody died because of it. And oh my goodness. Of course, these are just allegations and my opinions based on the stuff that I've read. I think it's reasonable to come to these conclusions, but so grateful for Brian for coming on, and also grateful that we can talk about these beautiful women, right? Young Anna Kepner and Lynette Hooker, who are sadly no longer with us. At least that's my belief in Lynette's case. I hope that each one of us has learned something from what Brian taught us tonight. Hey, listen, if you are in a situation where you are being abused, please find help. Dial 211 if you're in the United States. There are resources, and of course, there are so many people that want to help you. Okay, so please get out of that. And I know there are reasons why it's hard to get out. Brian kind of enumerated them perfectly. But please save yourself, save your children, and get out of that relationship. Okay, so that's what we have on these cases. Let me go back over to, we did our question of the day. We talked about Lynette and Anna. We did the Brian Bennett interview. So we do need to get into some headlines today, guys. We're going to, quick few updates on Nancy Guthrie, on the Charlie Kirk assassination, the Karen Reed civil case, the Spencer and Monique Tepe murders out of Ohio. And we've got some good news. I love good news. I love ending the show on a happy note. But before we do that, I think we should go ahead and get into 3 questions. Here we go.
It's 3 questions with Gavin Fish.
Hey guys, in this segment, I answer your questions, the questions that you send to me at 3questions@gavinfish.com, all spelled out, THREE, questions at gavinfish.com, 3questions@gavinfish.com. My solemn promise to you is that I will answer all the questions that come in, but I get to choose the order in which I do. There are some questions on my list that are getting pretty old. I need to get back to those. But sometimes I get a waterfall, an avalanche of questions, and then sometimes there's like a big dry spell where I get none. So send in your questions to 3questions@gavinfish.com, and I will answer them as I'm about to here. Question number 1. Oh, by the way, bonus points if you send in questions that can be answered by everyone in the chat. I like that very much. Okay, this from Cindy. I realized the Alex Murdaugh trial, we're going to talk about this a little bit tonight, but when we get to headlines, I realized the Alex Murdaugh trial is 9 months away at best. However, I live 7 miles from the Lexington County Courthouse. I plan to attend if the trial will be at this venue. How do you feel about that? Cindy, I feel great about that. If you want to be our correspondent, I would love to be there as well, but probably won't be able to. If you'd like to be our correspondent, if you're comfortable being on camera and having us ask you questions, we might want to talk. We might want to talk. Go to my website, gavinfish.com, click on the little envelope icon. I haven't shown you guys this in a while. I don't think I have anyway. If you go to gavinfish.com, on a desktop, there's a little envelope icon up here. If you're on mobile, there's like a little hamburger thing that you expand and you can open up the contact me form. It's just a little form that you can fill out and you can reach out to me and I can have one of my team members reach out to you. So, Cindy, if you're interested in being a correspondent on the Murdaugh trial, I am interested. In fact, that goes for almost any trial. If you are near a trial and don't mind being a correspondent and want to go in there and sit in the gallery and take notes, I think that would be fun. Definitely do that. Okay, question number 2. So, did I answer the question? How do I feel about it? I feel terrific. TWRRRIIFIICCC. Terrific. From Zoe, what is your favorite memory with each kid? I have 5 children. We would be here forever if I answered this question fully, but I have committed to doing it. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to mark this question as incomplete. And I'm just, but for tonight, I'm just going to answer one of the children. Let me think, because our kids are hilarious and lots of fun. Okay, so when our children, our tradition has been thus. When our children turn 14, they get to go on a business trip with dad. And those business trips have typically, well, they get to choose where they want to go. Not all business trips are overseas. Some of them were to, like, I don't know, San Francisco or Denver or something like that. But they get to choose where they want to go with me. They have all chosen so far to go on an international trip. So when our oldest was 14, she chose Munich. And the reason she chose Munich is she is a theater nerd, loves the sound of music, and Munich is close to Österreich, right? To Austria. And it's really easy to just kind of slip out and go down to Salzburg and go to like Villa Trapp and stuff like that. So she chose to go to Munich with me. Now, Munich was the what did they call that? The Austro-Hungarian Empire or whatever. It was like the center of that. And there is in town a palace called the Residence. And in the Residence, you can do several things, but one of them is the Treasury. One of the little self-guided tours. And you can put like a little, you get the headset and you can take the self-guided tours. Or I'm less of a tourist, so I will go to places that are touristy, but I just like to look around, read the placards and stuff like that. So Grace and I decided one afternoon that we would go to the Residence and we would do the Treasury. Now, this is an ancient treasury, right? This goes back to the Dark Ages. And so in the treasury, there are crowns and there are scepters and there are chalices and there are swords and daggers and there are, gowns. There's so many things that are hundreds and hundreds of years old. And it's kind of set up so that you kind of walk around it. You can be in there for a good 45 minutes or an hour. Look, you could probably be longer looking at all these things, but there are lots of corners is what I'm getting at. And there was a moment where I stopped to look at something. It was probably a sword. I'm a dude, right? So it was probably some Roman sword. That's probably exactly what it was. but I was looking at this sword, probably, or whatever it was, and I was reading the inscription, and then I look up, and this is the first time I've taken a child overseas. I look up, and my daughter is nowhere to be found. And I had a moment of panic, right? I had this like deep moment of panic that all happened in a flash. Like, what happens if I lose my daughter in a foreign country? I am thousands of miles away from home. What is her mother going to do with a lost child? All these things are happening. And all of a sudden, all of the treasures of the ages became valueless, became worthless to me as I scrambled around looking for my daughter, which took me all of about 12 seconds to find her around the next corner. She had just walked on to the next thing, and I found her and I saw her, and all was well in the world, right? But that memory sticks with me because there I was in a treasury surrounded by gold. Like, think Scrooge McDuck. I was surrounded by so much treasure, and all of it was worthless when my child, I thought, was missing. And I try to think about those things. I try to think about that experience when I talk to people like Sandy and Josh Greenberg, whose child is gone forever, right? How is it that I felt in those 10 or 12 seconds? And they have to deal with that for the rest of their lives. So maybe it's not the favorite happiest memory, but it was a good memory. I'm on a roll here. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so our next one is a son. He wanted to do a similar trip. It was May. I needed to be in Munich, but I also needed to be in England. And I thought it would be fun to just kind of tour Europe a little bit. So we did a little bit more than I did with our oldest daughter. One day we arrived in France. We arrived in Paris, and it was late. So we found our Airbnb, which was half the size of my office. We dropped our stuff, then we took an Uber out to the Eiffel Tower because he wanted to climb the Eiffel Tower. He didn't want to take the elevator. These were in the Fat Gavin days. It was rough. He wanted to climb the stairs, climb the Eiffel Tower, so we did that. By the time we had gone all the way up to the point where we couldn't climb anymore, and then we took the elevator to the top and came down, it was late, and we were hungry, but all of Paris was closing down. I said, hey, I think there is a restaurant around the corner that's probably open. So we walked over to this place that I knew. It was closed. So we kept walking down the avenue, and we found an Italian restaurant that was closing up shop, but their pizza oven was still warm. And I asked him, please, 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 can you make us any food? We'll be quick. We will eat quickly. And the guy goes, I can make you a pizza. Great. So he makes my favorite pizza in the world, the Neapolitan pizza, one for me, one for our son. And he keeps 2 chairs down on an outside table, and we have pizza. And to this day, our son says that is the most delicious pizza he's ever had. 1, it was a delicious pizza. 2, we had climbed the Eiffel Tower. And 3, we were very, very hungry. So that leads me to happy memory with child number 3 is several years later, I took her to London to CrimeCon, and then we just took the train to Paris just for the day. And I was like, we went to the Eiffel Tower. She did not want to climb it, so we took the elevator up. We did the thing, and I said, hey, let's go back to the pizza place. And so we walked around, and I walked her right to the pizza place. It had been like, I don't know, 8 or 9 years, but I walked her right to it, and I told the guy the story. And he made us each a pizza, and he gave us a gelato and said, thank you very much for coming back. And we sat there, ate our pizza, then had our gelato, and it was glorious. So there's 3 of 5. There are more, but there you go, Zoe. Thank you for the question. Last question of the day. What advice would you give your younger self? This goes back to the question of the day that I asked you guys, right? What advice would I give my younger self? Look, here's the thing. I like where I've ended up. Yeah, I have a few regrets. They're less regrets. They're more like I'm mourning some things. I'm mourning some choices that I made, or I'm mourning what I missed out on because of choices I made. Uh, but but I'm grateful for where I am. So the advice I guess I would give my younger self is uh, just be confident. Just be confident. See, I had this air of confidence when I was a kid, but it wasn't actually confidence. It was just an act. I was a good actor. I would ask my younger self to be completely okay with trying and losing, because that was my big fear. It still is my big fear. I wish that was something I could get over now. I wish I could convince my younger self, try, and it's okay to lose. It's okay to fail. You know what? Lean in for the kiss. If she doesn't want it, you will know, and it'll be okay. It won't kill you, right? Go for the goal. Uh, you know, audition for that play. Don't let the fear of failure, keep you from trying. And I think that's what I would tell my younger self. Now, I love it when you guys answer these questions. So what advice would you give your younger self? What's your favorite memory with a child? And what do you feel about having a correspondent at the Alex Murdaugh trial? I would love it if you would answer those questions. And while you do, let's check out what we've got for headlines tonight. Here we go.
True crime headlines.
Okie dokie, guys. Just a couple headlines for you tonight. 3 or 4 of them that I want to bring to your attention. In the Nancy Guthrie case, come on over with me over to the old Acrobat on News Nation from Tatiana Carter and Katie Pavlich, I'm not sure. Sheriff Chris Nanos rejected United Cajun Navy's offer to help, group says. Okay. I mean, it's okay that he did, but let's read it. The Pima County Sheriff's Office has rejected offers from the United Cajun Navy to assist in the search for Nancy Guthrie, according to the organization's vice president. On Monday, Brian Trasher joined Katie Pavlich Tonight, where he said bids for the volunteer search and rescue group to help in the search for 84-year-old mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie have been turned down. Trasher said the United Cajun Navy submitted a detailed plan to Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos outlining how the group could aid in the search for Guthrie. Quote, we really felt strongly that there was a good chance that she could have ended up somewhere along the border, Trasher said. He said the United Cajun Navy was prepared to deploy canine and drone teams in the area to help bring some closure to the Guthrie family. Trasher told Katie there was a blanket decision by the sheriff's office to not accept any outside help, despite broader frustration. Sorry, guys, I've got a sore throat. I'm coming down with a cold. So that is why I keep putting throat lozenges in my mouth. In the early days of the investigation, FBI Director Kash Patel told News Nation the agency was kept away from the crime scene until 4 days after Guthrie reported missing. Trasher said the United Cajun Navy has significant search and rescue resources along with partner groups in the area willing to help. We have a lot of good resources, and we could have brought to the area, he said. Other partner groups that we work with in the area are willing to come to the area to help us search, but for some reason, they just decided they were not going to take the outside help, Trasher said. So we just kind of went back to what we're doing. So I don't know exactly how I feel about that. I do feel like law enforcement could use the help of trained nonprofits and organizations that do this kind of thing. But I guess I'm conflicted. Guess I'm just conflicted. Over in the assassination of Charlie Kirk, news from the AP. Charlie Kirk's parents' widow to attend key hearing for man accused of his killing. Charlie Kirk's parents and his widow, Erica Kirk, will attend a key hearing in his murder case next week in Utah, according to a person familiar with the situation who spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak publicly. Prosecutors will aim to show during the week-long preliminary hearing that they have enough evidence against Tyler Robinson to proceed to a trial. The hearing will begin July 6th, will mark the most significant presentation of evidence in the case so far, and the first time that Kirk's family will be in the courtroom with the man accused of killing him. Prosecutors have said they intend to seek the DP if Robinson is convicted. The 23-year-old from southwestern Utah is charged with aggravated murder in the September 10th killing of Kirk. So, I'm glad that they're going to be doing that. Is that something you guys think we ought to cover, the prelim here on the channel? We might do that. We might be able to do that. Okay, turning over to Michael Proctor and Karen Reed. This is written by Charlie McKenna at Mass Live. The judge overseeing the wrongful death lawsuit against Karen Reed paused all discovery involving former Massachusetts State Police Trooper Michael Proctor in an order issued yesterday, writing he learned information that suggests a court order was violated. Judge Mark Gildea twice agreed to impound materials filed by Proctor's lawyers in support of their ultimately unsuccessful bid to delay his deposition. On Monday, Gildea said he was advised of information that allows for a reasonable inference of a violation of the impoundment order. He scheduled a Wednesday afternoon in-person hearing and ordered every lawyer with a notice of appearance filed in the case to attend. Ahead of that hearing, Gildea ordered all parties to the case to file sworn statements detailing all facts they know about any sharing of the impounded material with anyone other than parties and lawyers in the case. Somebody might be in trouble. We're going to see there. Moving over to Columbus. This is just a quick update from NBC4 in Columbus. The home of Spencer and Monica Tepe, which had been put up for sale, has been sold. The house in Wineland Park, located on the 1400 block of North 4th Street, sold on Wednesday last week for $695,000, according to public records. Original listing was $775,000 in the upscale neighborhood there in Wineland Park. That's got to be... That's tough. I hope it's just somebody who will turn that into a beautiful and beloved family home. That's what I hope. I hope that there will be nothing but goodness in that home from here on out. And lastly, Wanda, we need some good news music. You got your barbershop ready? Got your barbershop quartet ready? All right, here we go.
Good news ringing warm and clear, bringing smiles from ear to ear. Happy stories bright and true, make the whole world shine anew.
Very nice, Wanda. As you guys know, Wanda is my music director. She sings bass in that barbershop quartet, and I love it when you fellas come in. It's great. Okay, good news to end up our stream. Coming back to us, coming back over to Good News Network. Dad gave up his old Mustang to raise 6 kids. Decades later, his son got it back. Oh, I love this. Andy Corbley writes, it was a 1969 Mustang Mach 1. Daniel Allen would tell his boys, the best car he'd ever owned, and he traded it away to make room for his growing family. I love his Sandlot shirt there too. Every time Mr. Allen told the story, one of his 6 sons was listening intently. Shane Allen recently traded his own restored Mustang for one just like that which his father had sacrificed and surprised the old motorhead on Father's Day. After returning from several tours of war in Vietnam, Daniel Allen bought a white Mustang Mach 1 with a black hood and red stripes. It was a 4-speed manual transmission, and it colored his youth with joy. He took his future wife Diana out on their first date in the Pony and even drove it right on board the ferry where he proposed to her. Yet as their first child soon made way for a second, third, and so on, Daniel traded the Mach 1 away for something more practical. Shane Allen, the youngest of Daniel's sons, happened to grow up with a fondness for classic cars as well, and the two bonded over their shared interest. It became routine for the pair to attend Father's Day car shows together, where they'd look at Mustangs and reminisce about the one that got away. Quote, I knew the car he had dreamed about was that 1969 Mach 1. Shane told People, my dad and I have talked about this car since I was a kid. As it would happen, earlier this year, Shane spotted a white Mach 1 from 1969. Just like how his father had always described it, he jumped at the opportunity to fulfill his dad's dream of climbing back behind the same wheel now that his sons were all grown up. Trading his own restored Mustang GT away, there was a lot to do if Shane, as he envisioned it, wanted to surprise his dad with his mother of all Father's Day presents. The upholstery needed changing and the paint needed a refinish. It wasn't too much though, and soon, on their customary father-son visit to a Father's Day car show, Daniel saw a white Mach 1 sitting in the lot. It had a name tag dangling from the rearview mirror marked Daniel, which the man thought was just a coincidence. Joking, he said, where are my keys? A moment later, recorded in a priceless family video, Shane handed him the keys and told him to fire it up. Ah, that's glorious. That is glorious. I love this story so much, man. Quote, I shut the camera off. I wish I had continued filming, Shane says. When he got out of the car, he asked me how I made it happen. I told him I traded my custom GT for this Mach 1, and he broke down and hugged me. He told People that as a man, he recognizes the incredible sacrifices Daniel made to serve his family and was only too happy to have the opportunity to make some sort of repayment of that debt. Look at that. I love it. I love it. I love it. Those guys are your headlines.
True crime headlines.
All right, let's head on back over to the live chat, see what you guys are saying. Barb Olson says, where is the Lexington County Courthouse located? Same location as last trial? I don't know. I guess I didn't pay attention that closely. Let's see, what else have we got over here? Dana says, I'd tell my younger self to lean into your faith. It will be your anchor. Good advice. Just Ducky says, my favorite memory is being in the bride's suite with my daughter while she got ready for her wedding. That's beautiful. I love that. Let's see what else. Shay says that I crack her up. You are most welcome. Tina says, how neat. What a good going son. Ah, great story. Same car or same model. I don't think he found the exact car, but close enough. Listen, guys. Listen. You don't have to do this. But if you ever happen to come across a 1993 Ford Festiva LS, white, okay? Base model, 5-speed transmission. I think it was 5-speed. Maybe it's 4-speed. Manual transmission. And I'm talking about the little egg, right? It has to be an L model, the Festiva L. We don't want the GL. We want the L. All right? And you just love me enough to just buy me that car? Shh. That would be amazing. I want my car back. Tina says, such a great story, says Jenny. Mooney says the car story actually brought a tear to my eyes. Great story. Tina says, very cool. I thought so too. Guys, thank you so much for spending your time with me today. We will be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on this very channel. Of course, it means the world to me if you are in the rewatch crew to watch it and you have Spotify Premium Video to watch it over on Spotify, or if you listen on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you very much for that. Remember that tomorrow night after the show, we will be doing an after show for our members and our patrons. So definitely be on the lookout for that. If you're a member or a patron, we'll just be hanging out for a bit. Maybe a half hour, 45 minutes, maybe an hour. I don't know. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Nancy Guthrie case, but that's what we're going to be doing. I hope you will join me. Until then, I bid you adieu, and I will see you on the next one. Thank you very much for being here. Take care.